You're listening to Power Grid Talks, from the bucket trucks to the boardrooms. I'm your host, Tom Williamson, a journeyman lineman with over 15 years in the trade. Here we bring you real stories and real conversations from the field to the executive suites of the electric utility world. It's about the people who keep the power flowing and the grid strong. Let's get to work. In this episode of Power Grid Talks, I sit down with Tammy Kent, a leader who built her career in the utility world from the ground up. From lessons in the field to becoming a driving voice for safety across the industry, Tammy shares what it truly takes to succeed. If you're looking for real insights on leadership from someone who has walked the walk, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. And today we are here with Power Grid Talks, from the bucket trucks to the boardrooms, and talking to Tammy Kent. Tammy is someone who I truly respect in the industry. She wears a lot of hats, and she is co-founder of ATK Energy Group and OSR, among many other things. Tammy, how you doing today?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about your energy group and your umbrella of companies first, right? Because there's a lot there. So let's start diving into some of that.
Okay. So as you mentioned, we have ATK Energy Group. That is really just a holdings company. Makes it easy to handle all the finance, I won't really say HR stuff because we don't have a huge HR thing, but the finance, the legal, all of that corporate stuff that every company has to have. So why not share it? The big company and all of that is OSR, OneSource Restoration, our storm group that we started in 2015. So we're celebrating 10 years in business this year. Victory Powerline Services came in right in behind that. About a year later, saw a need for safety out there. Jimmy was a one-man show and out there doing safety audits and inspections, and that's grown to over 100 employees now that do project management, crew oversight, quality control, a whole myriad of things across the nation. Came in behind that not too long ago with Kent Utility Services, our union lineman based out of Indiana. And we've got Nomad Power Group, which is based out of Mississippi, non-union entity. ATK Logistics, which is bucket truck rental. Location Design Group, which is site acquisition for large manufacturing facilities, coordinating with power companies, local governments, and the business owners to find sites and make sure there's available energy to be able to power those sites. Let's see, we've also got Stratic, which is our technology-based platform. Axiom Utility, which we will be announcing soon. It's going to be our engineering arm. And then we got some personal things that we do locally back in Iowa that are a little more fun. But yeah, we've been very blessed to be able to launch all of that and bring in an amazing team to help run it. It's herding cats.
For sure, 100%. And I'm glad that you dove into all that, because I don't know if I could have memorized any of that. There's such a long list there. If you people think you're busy, you need to walk a day in Tammy's shoes, because I guarantee she probably can't keep a charge on her cell phone. There's no way as much stuff as she's got going on. So a lot of respect for that, Tammy, and there's a lot that goes on behind it. So let's talk about your start in the industry. So when did you get started, and what was your first job in the industry?
So I started in 1988 at Florida Power Corporation. I was hired in as a secretary in a brand new operations center that they opened at Lake Buena Vista on Disney property. I was the worst secretary ever to be hired. I was terrible. I was not a good secretary. That was not a good fit for me. And I realized that, and thankfully I had amazing managers that realized while there was talent there, this was not her talent. This is not her wheelhouse. So I went into the engineering department in clerical support, did that. Not long after starting there, I met the love of my life, Jimmy. He worked at a different operations center, and we met one evening when I was out with some friends, and he was out with his brother. And we've been together 36 years, so that was a blessing. He was a little fledgling. He may have been a grunt. I think he was still a groundman when I met him, or had recently made apprentice. He's still figuring out the shovel, right?
Yep.
So finally talked him into coming over to my side of town. But I spent time at Buena Vista in the engineering department, and then got a little bored and moved around. So I've worked in stores, the district offices where you used to pay your bill, the customer call center where I learned a lot. My first time ever in the call center was the Christmas ice storm in Florida. Yeah, we had an ice storm.
Yeah.
And Jimmy volunteered me to go help out because they needed help, and I got cussed out all night long.
Yeah.
That was my first experience with the call center. Took a couple years off with the boys. It's time to have babies. Took a couple years off, went back, spent some time in R&D metering, and went through transmission, substation, that department, and then went into HR where I really enjoyed that job. I was hiring all the line guys, right? All the apprentices. If it was a bargaining unit position, I did all the pre-employment testing, the screening. So I got to meet a lot of people. I traveled to state doing all that. Really enjoyed that. Got involved in the Lineman Apprentice pre-employment program where they had to go spend the weekend and do the physical agility stuff. So that was super cool. Around about that time, Carolina Power and Light bought out Florida Power Corporation, so corporate wasn't really a good place to be. So went back to my roots in engineering and got offered a entry-level engineer position where I had to learn what one-aught service cable was. And, I had to learn
all the field stuff.
If we didn't know a name of it, it was called HOOTUS. The guy who trained me, that HOOTUS, don't forget your HOOTUS. And that was back when I had to put every individual piece of a job into the computer program, and I had to draw it. And I'm not an artist either. I'm not a designer. But I made it work, and I had a private tutor at home with my husband, so that was awesome. Worked my way around and up, and when I left the company, I was what they call a service coordinator. I had a very large service area. One-aught service to a well, a super Walmart, or a 1,000-lot subdivision. It was my baby.
Wow.
I had to see it start to finish, design, permitting, construction, all of that. So that's what I was doing when I left the power company.
So how many years was that? When you left the power company, you had been there?
I left in 2004.
Okay. In that time, basically, you saw almost every aspect of that power company while you were there.
Yeah,
right?
it was awesome.
Yeah,
I tell people
cool.
all the time where I learned the most was in the call center because I had to interact with every department at the utility. You got exposed to all of it. I encourage everyone to spend time in the call, if they even have call centers anymore. But yeah, I learned the most there. And we had, we got called out for outages after hours. We had to go in and work. And yeah, it was really cool. I learned a lot there.
Yeah, it's almost like it should be a rite of passage for people in that industry, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, good deal.
Because you touch every department.
All right, so you left the utility side of it, and what was your next step?
So in 2004, Florida got hit with back-to-back hurricanes, right? Jimmy's on one side of the state, I'm on the other, and the kids are staying with the in-laws and fending for themselves, no power either, right? And, they'd come out, this is going to be the next 20 years, it's going to be like this, and I don't want my kids being raised by somebody else. So decided to leave the company. Well, part of my responsibility at the company was the Lineman Rodeo. I also coordinated that. I'd set up our local rodeo, all the events, work with the training department, and then take our teams to Kansas City. And if you've ever been to Kansas City, the big thing is barbecue night, trade night with the T-shirts and the hats.
Oh, yeah.
And so part of my responsibility was making sure we had cool stuff to take to Kansas City. And one year we went out there and I did the Lineman butt shirt, right? Yep. My HR department wasn't happy about that, so we couldn't put the company logo on it, but, it said Lineman Butts Drive Me Nuts.
Yeah,
the
and
ladies
people loved it.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Because you'd have this 100-pound girl show up with her 3 ex-boyfriend's T-shirt. Hey, can you trade me?
Yeah.
So there's never anything there for the ladies. And I thought, this will be fun, right? They'll love it. Oh, my God. They freaked. We had people like, I got 5 acres in Arkansas. I'll give you, if you've got one of those shirts, joking around. I'll give you $100,
Oh, yeah.
So we had a lot of fun with that. My management team's like, you're really good at this. You should do something with this. And, keep in mind, this was 2003, 2004. It was AOL, you got mail, shopping carts weren't a thing. This whole being able to touch the world really was just becoming a new thing.
Yeah, the internet was making noises still, right? When you fired it
that
up.
whole dial-up thing, But I was like, you know what? I'm going to have fun with this. So I launched the Lineman Barn. Jimmy and I sat around one afternoon and we're like, what can we call it? And he would always call me from a payphone and be like, hey, I'm headed back to the barn. I'll be home in a little while, right? And so the Lineman Barn was born.
That's awesome.
And we started that, and my oldest son had moved out of the house at the time, Stetson, so his bedroom became the warehouse, right? Started out with just a couple shirts, and and grew it. Facebook was really big when that came on. And, for a long time, I tried to keep my identity secret. I didn't want them to know it was a woman running the Lineman Barn because it's a guy thing, right? But I have a very loud personality, so that didn't last very long. So people knew it was Tammy. She's the Lineman Barn. She's a Lineman Barn lady. And it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And part of that, it kept me involved in the industry. Had a real high focus on safety, accidents, injuries. I vividly recall a young apprentice calling me from Colorado, and he had witnessed his lineman killed. And he called me. He's just crying. He's like, I can't do this. I can't stay in this trade. And he just needed somebody to talk to, right? And it's like, I'm the T-shirt lady. Like, I'm selling T-shirts and decals, but people felt like they could reach out to me, right? Like I could bring that to the industry. I had somebody tell me when I was running Lineman Barn, if it happened in the industry, it came through you. You're like the CNN of line work, right? That was years ago when CNN was real news.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
None of them are real news anymore. But so, it became part of who I was. But it kept me connected to the industry, and storms were a big part of that. And, I tell people all the time, funny stories, Lineman Barn really is what got Jimmy and I in where we launched OSR and everything else we've got.
And that's so
T-shirt
awesome.
company. Yeah.
People don't realize in this industry how much of a demand there are for the T-shirts, the stickers, the hats, all of that stuff. People want it all the time.
They're proud of what they do.
That's it. It's their life. It's a lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
So you got that off the ground and running, and Lineman Barn is still a very successful thing to this day. And I think it's because of the roots that you laid down for it, right? You did it the right way. And you made people realize that there is more to the industry than just turning on your light switch and lights come on. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes to get to that point, right?
For sure.
Okay, so then you woke up one day and decided Lineman Barn wasn't it. You had another calling?
Sort of, kind of. So I got a call from what is now my competitor. And they're like, hey, we need to recruit some damage assessors for what we do, this storm thing. And, can you help us? Can you advertise? And Jimmy had, by this point, left the power company.
Okay.
And his passion is hunting and, working on the farms. At the time, we only had like 120 acres, and you can only do so much. And He was getting a little bored, and I'm like, okay, I got to find this guy something to do. So I told him, I said, I'll help you with recruiting if you'll look at taking my husband on storm. Like, I'll send you his resume. What can he do, right?
Yep.
And so that year was 2012. Sandy hit.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Big year.
So we got called to go. First, we got called, I think it was Isaac, and we went down to Louisiana. And didn't turn out the way. So I was supposed to go do damage assessment with my engineering background, and he was going to go run line crews. And we never got separated. Just logistics didn't work out.
Yep.
So I ended up in the field with him, which was an eye opener for me, like really being there with the line crews.
Especially in that situation, right?
And in that situation, there was a need for safety and some training, right? And Jimmy was extremely concerned. So we had a conversation with the company and said, we can't work storm with you if you're going to take those same resources. Not a good fit. So they called us for Sandy, and I said, we'll go as long as it's not the same folks. And we get up there, and it's the same folks, right? And we're up there, and we were there maybe 2 weeks, and finally Jimmy was like, I can't do this. I can't. I'm not going to watch somebody get hurt.
Yep.
I was running their damage assessment side, my second storm. And he was, out there with the line crews, and he said, we're leaving. It's time to go. So I told him, we're out of here. It's hunting season. We're out of here, right? That's what I told him.
That's it.
And that was 2012, and it's like, man, there's got to be better. Like, it's got to be better. But I'm doing my little T-shirt thing, and I'm busy with that, and I can't save the problems of the world. Fast forward a couple years through Lineman Barn, I met some people. So I helped get NSUJL started during that time.
Okay, that's awesome.
Sisterhood.
Yeah.
Yep. I was one of the founding members. Helped a lot with the marketing and, because of the Lineman Barn, right? You could get out there and push that. I also helped the Fallen Lineman organization. that helps line workers.
Oh, both those are amazing.
Anywhere I could help, right? Tracy Moore with her foundation in Florida, through losing her husband with the city of Lakeland many years ago. I try to help her. So always, trying to do that. And met a gentleman that wanted to do some different things. He was part of the Fallen Lineman organization, Chad Dubay. A lot of people know Chad. Really cool guy. Chad loves this industry. And so we were helping him with some things and working on some things and sort of dabbling in the storm thing. Jimmy was going to try to help him get the school started for linemen down in Texas. And I don't know where all of that ever ended up. But through that, met some people that wanted to get, a storm company started. And I'm going to really tell you some stuff.
Okay.
People are always like, oh my God, you're kidding me, right? So really wanted to try to get that launch with Chad and didn't work out that way. But through that, met a guy that he calls up out of nowhere and he's like, hey, I met you on Storm. I'm helping launch this entity down in Florida, and I really need a safety department, and I don't have that stood up yet. Can Jimmy come down there and help stand this up for me, right? And do it from a contractor basis. Yep. And he says, and you can come help on the storm side. I was like, oh, I've been selling T-shirts. He's like, yeah, and I'll even pay you for it, right? Yeah. He's like, I'll give you a salary and all of this. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty cool. So we go down to help this startup. We're down in South Florida, which we, born and raised in Florida, had never been to South Florida. Okay. You just don't, Central Florida don't go south. You just go north.
You don't
right?
cross that line.
You don't cross that line. It's not Florida anymore. So we're down there in South Florida, and, the kids are grown by now. This is 2014. And down there trying to get this company up and going. And it is a hot mess. It's a hot mess because they're subbing under a sub under a sub. This is all new to us, right? We're utility people. And all new equipment, all new bucket trucks, digger derricks, 10,000 square foot warehouse. And we're like, man, this is something, right? But it was struggling on the blue sky. Now, storm side, I'd already gone out and met some people, got some contracts. Like, I'm just living my best life. This is cool. Yep. And then, so this guy was the vice president. And then the president comes to me and says, hey, we fired this guy and you're going to report to me. Well, keep in mind, I hadn't had a boss in a very long time. Yeah. I'd been running the Lineman Barn and didn't particularly care for that person.
Yep.
And you have
Personality
to be happy.
clash. Yeah.
You have to be happy. So I told Jimmy, I just can't do it. So I know people, right? So I'm talking to people. I'm in Florida talking to people in Oklahoma. And they're telling me that they're going to take a couple companies, put them together, grow it, build it, flip it. Yep. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. This guy I know just got fired. But he's a really nice guy. He's from Georgia. He's like Opie Taylor. Like, I think he'd be a really good guy to come out there and help y'all do this. Super smart, college educated, all these things. So they called me up from Oklahoma, and I told them, this is not going to be my home back here. I can't work for personality issues. Yep. And they're like, well, come out here, and we'll pay you, and we'll give you part ownership. And I'm like, man, this just keeps getting better, right? So they give Jimmy and I 25% ownership of what is OSR, OneSource Restoration, and there was OneSource T&D. And it was investors in Oklahoma. There was one guy was like UPS, one guy owned Burger King restaurants, there's oil field money, there's attorney. All these people came together to form all of this. And then Jimmy and I invested a little bit. We were teeny tiny little, we working stiffs, but we invested a little bit. So it was unique in that we were employee investors, part owner also. And we started seeing some of the same things happen there that happened in Florida. All of a sudden, all this new equipment's being bought, and we knew there was limited funds, right? Yeah. All this equipment's being bought, and, it was some of the same stories. And I'm like, you said that happened in Florida, coming out of this VP guy's mouth, right? And then we would be in meetings, and he would say, oh, yeah, I talked to so-and-so at such and such utility, and that work's coming. Well, I call so-and-so at such and such utilities, never heard of the guy, right? And so I'm like, Jimmy and I started putting two and two together, like, this guy's not all right. And so we go to the board and we try to tell him, well, he could be on American Greed. He is such a con. I'm telling you, such a con. And so he's got them convinced I'm Aunt B, little Miss Susie Homemaker. I don't have business acumen. Listen, I'm a high school graduate, and I worked my butt off to have what I have. Yep. And so whatever. So he came to me and he's like, hey, we're going to dissolve OSR and you're going to report to me. And I'm like, I'm not the smartest person out there and I'm not a lawyer, but that's not how that works and that's not going to happen.
Okay.
So I contacted a lawyer and I said, hey, here's what I got going on. So we had just worked, I think, maybe Hurricane Matthew.
Yep.
Through my relationships.
Yep.
And I was like, I called up the main guy that was the investor and I said, look, this is not going to work. I'm not going to work for him. You can't dissolve it. You can't buy me. You're broke. Yep. He has broke you buying all these buckets and stuff. So you can keep all the income that's coming from Hurricane Matthew. I want the company.
There you go. Okay.
So what I get is the name of the company, a 20-foot cargo trailer, and 50 tablets. And I walked away.
Okay.
That was
all
it.
Right. So at that time, with that group, I think a lot of people don't realize our industry is a very tight-knit industry. You meet a lot of people, you know a lot of people, but they can also sniff out people who are not part of the industry real quick, right? So the rest of that group was trying to figure out the industry but didn't have a foothold in it, right?
Correct.
So you use that strength that you had with the foothold in the industry to realize that, hey, there's something that can happen here. Okay,
Yep.
I love it. Okay.
Yep. So Jimmy and I walk away with our little cargo trailer and our 50 tablets, but we did have a couple contracts. Yep. And so I was like, okay, it's do or die. Like, I have my best friend working with me. I convinced her to come on board and work with me, and one other gentleman. I'm responsible for them.
Yeah.
Their medical
lives.
insurance,
Yeah.
their lives, their bills, their family, their kids. They're depending on me to make sure that happens. So I'm like, all right, let's go get it. So I am traveling nonstop. I'm meeting any utility I can meet. I'm going to every conference. And it just started happening, right? I started with I want to say 60 damage assessment teams. That was our max then. We just started adding damage assessment teams, and then I added an employee here, and then we'd add line crew services. And plus, I'm the one that's talking to the utilities. So, just grow it. For a long time, I bet we were maybe 8 employees at OSR trying to manage all of this. And we're now pushing 40.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Just because it's gotten so big. But fast forward, the OneSource T&D went bankrupt, right? Yep. Which I hated to see because
but you saw it coming.
I saw it coming. And I tell people, I feel like I walked through the gates of hell and came out like I'm like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? It could have destroyed us, right? And we were able to survive that fire. We were able to walk through that hell and come out better for it because we do the right thing.
That's it. And I love how you're like, oh, it formed, it developed, and now I've got 8 employees. It doesn't just happen like that. For you people who are listening right now, there's a lot of sleepless nights in there. There's a lot of tears in there. There's a lot of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do tomorrow in there? All of that is a longer process day to day than people realize. And they look back on it now like, oh, it just happened. No, it doesn't just happen. It's lots of hours. It's lots of stress. It's lots of how do we tackle this, thinking outside the box, that kind of stuff. But you took the chance and you committed and made the decisions, and it worked out great. So
yeah, I had to learn it. I had to learn about general liability insurance and workers' comp and how do I fund a storm? How do I pay these people? Because the utility does not pay in a timely manner, especially when it's a large event.
Exactly.
You could wait a year to get paid. How do I pay these people? How do I do that, right? So I had to learn about finance and factoring companies, and I've learned through all of that. There were a lot of stumbling. What happens when one of your 1099 wrecks your rental car? Then what, right? And then the rental car company calls you up and says, you've had too many accidents in a year. We're not going to let you buy our insurance anymore. Well, what do you do then? How do you handle all of that? It doesn't happen. It isn't, you go from 5 to 50. No, there's a lot of sleepless nights. I can remember my team being like, you emailed me at 3 a.m. Yeah, well, I was up. Yeah. Okay? I couldn't sleep. I'm not expecting you to answer me at 3. It's just I've got to get it out. Yeah. And, most times it's 18-hour days.
That's it. The business owner is not 9 to 5 like people think it is.
No, you work more hours as a business owner as you ever would work as an employee.
So I love it. I love the utility industry start and getting all that experience, right? I love that you jumped to a completely different aspect of it with the T-shirts and the hats and all of that stuff. I think that's amazing. But then to take that next leap into the OSR part of it and get out of your comfort zone for that is just such a huge feat, and I commend you for that. I think that's great. You had a great support, right? Between Jimmy and the rest of your team, you've got great support behind you, and you've kept building that support, and I think that's why you have the team you have today. It's because they know that you are going to support them, and they feel like they have a voice, and there's a lot to be said for that, because I think in this industry that gets lost a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So we've talked about the early days and what those are like and all the sleepless nights. I won't stress you out about that anymore. In this industry, what do you think there's something that the customers or the general public often misunderstand about the line work industry in general?
Inevitably, what they see are the two guys in the truck taking a nap.
Yep, every time.
Or the trucks are just riding around, they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
They truly don't understand what it takes to get power to their house. And I feel like the utilities have done their due diligence. They put out all kinds of marketing materials to explain that. They still don't get it. All they know is they flipped that switch and the lights didn't come on, or they walked in their house and it's hot. So, I really feel like they don't understand the day in the life of.
Yeah.
Right? And if they could have a peek into that, I don't know if maybe a little more outreach at the elementary, middle school level would help with, some of that. And you could take it from a first responder direction in general, right? Yep. To teach them when they're younger, the first responders, the police, the fire, the vegetation crews, the line crews, all of those people that come out in an emergency. Right? If you could start that at more of a grassroots effort, but if they truly could understand what it took to get that power back on, I think they'd be a little more understanding. Yeah,
and that was magnified in Houston. Was that 2 years ago now, I guess? They had the hurricane in Houston down there, and some stuff went out on the news. And next thing you know, linemen are being basically attacked out on the job, right? Because these customers thought that they weren't responding fast enough, weren't doing what they were supposed to do. They were mad at the utility down there, and it got a little bit ugly for some of them.
Yeah, for sure.
I hate that. Along the lines of that, I wish that we could see more of these live line demonstration trailers going out and doing more of those presentations at whether it's fairs or just where the people are, and just spreading some knowledge about this is what happens. These are real people out here. This is what they have to go through to be able to get your light switch to work. It's not just that simple, right?
Yeah, for sure.
As you went through the different stages of this, what was something that was key in your mind to build the trust for some of these major clients that you have? Because you're not talking to a flower shop. You're talking to big CEO, executive level people at utility companies across the country. So what's something you keep key into building those relationships?
When I first started going out and meeting with the utilities, I was so nervous. I was so nervous. And Jimmy's like, they can't eat you. Okay? They can't eat you. They're just like you. And I can remember, so it's you're human, right? And it's real life. And I can remember the very first time I met, he's retired now, Phil Lewis with AEP. And I was extremely nervous to meet him. And right before walking in his office, I got a call that my mom was at the hospital and they think it's cancer. So right before I walk in his office, I get hit with that. But you know what? I can go in there and try to pretend like I didn't just get that call, or I can go in there and let him know, hey, if I'm not on my A game, here's what just happened.
Yeah,
right?
This is life.
You know, I learned that a long time ago. I used to tell Jimmy all the time, I wish I had more of a polished look. And so for those who have never met me and can't see me through this podcast, I have naturally very curly hair.
Yep.
It's very difficult to have a polished look with that, and so I'll even bring that up when I'm talking to a group. I'll tell that story. I wish I had a polished look. I wish this, I wish that. You have to go in and you got to be who you are, and you have to be true to yourself, because if you go in and you're not who you are, if they can't believe you're not the person that you say you are, how are they going to believe anything else that you bring to the table, right?
It. Yep.
So you got to go in and have some couth and manners and all of that. I'm not saying go in and be a heathen, but you have to stay true to who you are and be as transparent as possible.
That's it.
Because if they can't believe who they're sitting there talking to is that person, they're not going to believe that you can be there in 8 hours, or that you bring qualified linemen, or that your damage assessors have iPads and know how to use them. They're not going to believe any of that. They're going to doubt it all because they doubt who they're sitting there talking to.
Yep. I love it. That's great. So let's talk about value add, right? So I saw an article here recently that you put on, I believe it was LinkedIn, and it was talking about one of your company's Victory and how they just saved a utility company over $1 million, right? Yeah. So that's a pretty huge savings to anybody. And I'm sure that utility company was very grateful to get that in there. How did that kind of evolve and take place? Let's talk about that.
So we had gotten called because there were some quality control issues, or suspected. They really, people aren't in the field like they used to be. The engineers aren't out there. The supervisors aren't out there. They're in this meeting, that meeting. They're working remote. Your engineer for a job in Florida may be in Oregon, right? So you don't have that field presence that you used to. So we get called and we're asked to perform this service. The key that we have found what works for us is, number one, that person's got to be qualified to even be out there looking at what they're looking at.
Yep.
Too many times it's a warm button, a seat. You're just filling a need. Oh, you wired audio for a company. You understand wiring. Okay, you can go do this. I know that sounds silly, but it's out there.
Oh, it's definitely out there. Yeah, the vetting process is not the same.
Yeah. So we are very adamant about that at Victory Powerline Services. It's something Jimmy established from day one. Like I said, he was the one out there, right, doing it. So you got to start with that qualified person, and they got to know what they're looking at, and they got to understand the task, right? They got to understand what their mission is and why they're out there. If they came from that utility, most times that's a benefit. Sometimes not so much, because they walk through with blinders on. It's always been that way. It's always done that way, that type of thing. But find that qualified person, let them understand what the mission is, and truly partner with that utility and with your contractor, right?
Yep.
I sat in a meeting with a utility with my Victory shirt on, with Jimmy, and the contractors that were doing the work. We couldn't convey to them enough that we're there to help them also, right? The safer you're performing the job, the more contract compliant it is, the construction is correct, and it's a good quality product, you're going to be more profitable. You're not going to have to go back and redo it, right? So if you can truly go in there with a caring mindset and know that you need to go in and help make a difference, you're not there to... Jimmy will say, I'm not here to just bust their balls, right? That's not why we're here. We're here to truly help. We're here to help them and partner with them, and we're here to help the utility. We're being paid by the utility, but we all can benefit in this together if we'll work together on it. And so that's what we did. We just went out. The first one's always hard, right? Like, you go out there and they feel like you're out there just to bust them. But if they'll come around and listen and comply and do what they're hired to do, they'll realize that it's benefiting them and increasing their profit margin. Their employees are happier. They're not being fussed at for doing things the wrong way or whatever. And they're safer, right? And everyone's going to benefit from it. So that's sort of the mindset where at Victory, we're not there just to do a job. We're there to make a difference.
Yeah, true value add, right?
A true value add for the utility, but a byproduct, it adds value for the contractor.
And all the way down to the customer, right? The more efficient that utility can be, the more money they can save, the less wasted time they have, the better off the customer is for that utility as well.
Yeah, and less of an economic impact. If everything is on or under budget, right, and there's not overspends because it wasn't done correct, the first time, there was one particular client that came to us, and they had received change orders from the contractor that were in the millions.
Yeah.
Significant, in the millions. Somebody's got to pay that bill. So the utility needs to be good stewards of their customers' money, right? The contractor needs to understand in a roundabout way. So what if the contractor, every employee lives within that service area? That's going to fall back on them, and they don't even realize it, right? So they all need to be good stewards of that money to help drive those costs down, because at the end of the day, it's the customer that's going to have to foot that bill. And I think for the most part, folks go out with a good intention, right? Their intention is to go out and do a good job and do a safe job and do it right. they lose their way sometimes, or they maybe get a little lax. I remember when I had the Lineman Barn, the big thing, a lot of times this union, non-union crap would start on the page, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I would tell them, okay, Mr. Union guy, you're not going to convince this guy to come be union when you're calling him every name under the book.
That's exactly right.
And treating him like he's a dog and less than you and all that. And, hey, non-union guy, you need to listen to what he's telling you and think about benefits, right? The guys in the trade do not think about benefits enough. They don't. They don't understand how important life insurance is and medical insurance.
That's it.
But you would get all this back and forth started, and they would say, this company as a whole sucks. And I'm like, wait a minute, guy. I know people at that company. You may have a bad GF in an area.
Yep.
It's that GF that's making that crew not perform as well as they could be. And over here, you've got a great GF, a great leadership structure, and they are knocking it out of the park. They're working safe. They're making their daily grind. They're getting everything done they're supposed to be on target for the budget and all that. So you can't say as a whole that company sucks. You got to break it down to those groups, those GF level, those foreman level. You see it all the time. You've got one area that's performing flawlessly and another one's not. Somebody needs to be looking at that and figure out why.
Yeah,
and
find the bad
understand
apple.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Because those attitudes can ruin a whole crew, a whole yard, and it can just fester from that, right? Those bad attitudes and the lazy mindsets, it kind of grows like a cancer in this industry. And I wish it didn't, but you're right, it does.
Yeah, I go back to the utility days, and there's one particular yard that anybody that's worked there, it's always like that yard, and it's like, what is it about that yard? Okay, well, you change the foreman or the GF or whatever that's over there, but if the same crew's still there, you've only fixed part of the problem, right?
Yep. Yep.
So, you really gotta don't turn a blind eye to it. Fix it. If there's a problem, fix it. If there's somebody, you've got an employee that everybody's complaining about, well, go to that employee. Find out what's going on with them. Why are you acting the way you're acting? What's going on? What's going on in your life?
Yeah.
How can I help you?
Yeah, because there's a cause there, right?
There's a cause.
Back to being human again, right?
Yeah, you got to be human.
Yep. Yeah, no, I love the value add that Victory brought on that one, and it really kind of resonated with me because I feel like in the industry as a whole, that can be utilized a lot more. We all get so used to being in our own bubble and in our own backyard, and especially at these utility companies, they see what's inside their walls a lot, but they don't always see what's going on at other places. So to get a different set of eyes and a different mindset on that, with the same goal as, hey, we're trying to be more efficient, we're trying to save money, we're trying to be safe, I think that extra set of eyes and that extra voice makes a big difference sometimes, and it proved it there, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that as we've grown and hired folks, and some have come from utilities, I tell them, be patient and understand you spent your entire career at this utility. Everything you knew was within that realm.
Yep.
There is a world outside of that realm. And be open to other ideas. And it's difficult when I go into a utility meeting and they're like, oh, well, here's our process for this. Boom, 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 boom. And I just sit there like, okay. Have you thought about maybe this? And I tell them all the time, pick my brain. I've worked for probably 40 different utilities. There's great processes and procedures out there, and there's some that aren't as successful. Pick my brain. Yeah. I am happy to share with you what we have experienced. And I'm not saying one is right and one's not. You got to figure out what's right for you. But pick my brain. Ask me over the last 10 years and the hundreds of storms I've been on, what was successful? What utility was great? And how can we learn from that?
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's not. And I love that. Be humble enough to ask what other people have been through, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. In the electric industry as a whole, we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, it's very male dominated, right? So you were talking about with Lineman Barn, how you were kind of hesitant to let them know that it was you behind the curtain, right? The man behind the curtain, like Wizard of Oz, right? Okay. So how do you feel like you kind of are tackling that, and do you feel like that's changing over the years since you started, or is that something you still battle with every day?
There's been change, some good, some I consider negative, and it is something that I do still battle. I battle a little bit differently now.
Okay.
You know, with having a little bit of little more maturity and, years under my belt. The good change is you do see different people get opportunities now, right?
Yep.
Sometimes when I pick up the phone to call the storm boss, we'll just call him that, at the utility, sometimes it is a woman now. It's great when you call that storm boss and they know what they're talking about. It sucks when they're freaking clueless. I have always said I wanted to advance and grow and move up and move ahead based on what I've accomplished, not because I'm a woman, right?
That's it.
Too many times I have seen it where that person is in that position just because they're a woman. And I don't want to get political on any of this. I'm going to stick to women because I'm a woman. I would hate to be in a position simply because I was a woman.
Yeah.
I want to be there because I earned it. I freaking killed it.
Yeah.
I went out and learned what had to be learned. I either went back to school, I went out in the field, I went to a different department, moved, whatever it was to advance myself in my career. Put in the extra hours. I want it because I earned it, not given to me because I'm a woman. So there are more opportunities now. I don't feel like I had a manager one time that gave me an average performance review. I've never been average. I've never been average. I've always tried extra hard. And he gave me an average performance review, and a peer had gotten promoted to the next level in engineering before me. This peer, he's no longer with us, so I don't want to talk bad about him, but we were not at the same level. I was killing it. My jobs were way more advanced than him, but he got a promotion and I didn't. So you deal with it. You know, I think a lot of that mentality and a lot of that behavior is behind us. And let's be real, on the line side of things, I would not want to be out there as a woman doing line work. That crap is hard and it's heavy, right? And, I'd carry around a 50-pound bag of corn out helping Jimmy, field deer feeders and stuff like that. I'm 58. That's a little bit more of a struggle now, but as a woman, it is very physically demanding. And there are some women I have met out there and they kill it. They are killing it and they're doing a great job. We recently had a storm call out with KUS and 2 of our crew members were women. And Cole said they rocked it. They did awesome. Perfect. I think one was the EO and one, I think he may have even made foreman. I can't remember. But he said they killed it. They did a phenomenal job. And I was excited to hear that, right? Like, that's super cool. Me personally, I couldn't do it. Yeah. I couldn't, Jimmy messes with me all the time because I don't have a CDL and I wish I did, right? And he's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, don't tell me I can't, right? But, those women that worked for us at KUS on that recent storm event, they earned it. They earned what they had. It wasn't given to them. So I love to see women in non-traditional roles, but earn it. Earn it, ladies. Don't let somebody hand it to you. Earn it.
That's perfect. I love that. Yep, that's great advice to go by. So talking about some changes in the industry, right? So over the decades, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the utility industry as a whole?
Well, technology, obviously, right? You hear about the self-healing systems and the smart grids, and, technology has been huge. Culturally, there's changes there. We just touched on a little bit of that, but there's a huge, back when I started at Buena Vista, the dock was full.
Yeah.
Florida Power Corporation, green trucks, guys in Florida Power Corporation hats.
Yep.
I think that same yard, and I don't want to quote anything company official because I don't know, but I think they got less than 20 full-time line workers in those yards now. It's very heavily dependent on contractors. I get it. All the business reasons why you do that. I think that's one of the biggest swings from the craft side of it that you've seen. I can remember way, way, way back when the only company I ever knew of was Red Simpson. I think anybody that's over a certain age, that's where they started. Red Simpson. Like, that was the only game in town. in the South. I can't speak for the Midwest or the Northeast, but, that was it. And there were very few contractors, very few. And then it started, okay, they're going to come in and put in some underground services. Then they started underground mainline. Then they started overhead stuff and blah, and blah, and blah. And now you've got some companies that the troubleshooters are contractors. It's not, employees anymore. The vast majority, there's a little co-op out in Kansas that we met with. They don't have one full-time line worker.
Wow.
They're smaller, obviously, but everything is either a neighboring co-op helps them or it's contracted out. Yeah, so that's been a huge swing, and, it's a lineman's world. It's a lineman's world. You got these guys that they don't work a full-time line job, right? They get that golden ticket, and then they're maybe farming, or they got an excavating business or a landscaping business or catering or whatever it is their passion is. They're something else, and they take storm calls, right? It's a lineman's world. And the person that gets the lineman gets the biggest share of that. And,
that's it.
And
yep, that was almost obsolete in 1988, right?
You never would have heard of that. The people didn't jump jobs. And I remember, when Jimmy very first started, when we wanted to move to the Midwest, it was hard to find out about jobs outside your little area.
Yeah.
And now I could call you tomorrow and have a job the next day,
that's it.
right? As
Click
a
of a
lineman.
button away.
Yeah.
Another big change that I think has happened a lot since 1988 is the renewables, right? So let's talk about the renewables for a minute and how that's affecting the industry as a whole. And we don't have to get into all of the nuts and bolts of it all, but where do you think that's going to go? Do you think it's going to keep kind of growing and becoming even more of an influence on the industry as a whole?
So I don't follow it as closely as some. You saw the windmills driving in, right?
Yeah.
They ask about our property. Nope, it's off limits. I just I don't follow it that closely. I do think it may have peaked.
Okay.
And that may be political reasons for that. I do think it may have peaked. I also think that there's other things that they're looking at, like these, and I know I'm going to call it wrong, but it's like these little mini nuclear reactors, right? Like these nuclear, I forget what they call them. I've talked to a couple of people about them, but you almost can set up these little regional nuclear power stations, right? And I think that you're going to see some of that technology coming about. Nuclear can be safe and it can be clean.
Yep.
You're seeing some coal-fired plants come back online, So I think that the renewable and maybe some of that technology may have peaked, and now they're going to look at even more alternate things like nuclear and, these little portable nuclear things.
Perfect. I love it. So let's talk about storm response for a minute, because I know that's a big thing for you, and that's something you deal with a lot. And I don't know how much everyone knows outside of the industry what goes on there. So a storm happens, and it's kind of like crisis management mode for our industry. A lot of things get crazy. There's a million moving parts and pieces all at the same time. So what's your approach in those situations, and kind of how do you handle some of that chaos? Do you have like a set thing for your team and your team does X, Y, Z? Or is it kind of fly by the seat of your pants? Can you give us some insight on how that works at your level?
All the above. All the above. If you can prepare and be proactive, it's going to make for a better response.
Okay.
That being said, you can only control so much, right? Unfortunately, a lot of the utilities have to be reactive because of regulatory pressures, spending the money, right? As soon as you pull the trigger to bring resources in, you're spending money.
Yeah, and it's a lot of money.
And millions. And ultimately, that has to go back on the consumer or the co-op member. Somebody's got to foot that bill. So kudos to the utilities for being good stewards of that. However, the longer you wait, especially ice storms. I can't tell the utilities enough. Please do not wait until the ice is on the ground to call us to respond, because I will not put people in harm's way.
Yeah, we actually lost some calls this past year because of that reason. We refused to put trucks on the road in the middle of the storm, and they just said, okay, we don't need you then.
Yeah. So, the more that you can plan and so we've got certain meteorologists that we follow. Mike with Mike's weather page, I've been following him since the 2004 hurricanes, coming from Florida, and that's where he's from. And we have become very good friends, and we partner on things. We were doing some 10-year giveaways with him, and, it's hurricane season kickoff. And, so we follow him. I like Aaron Tuttle out in Oklahoma. He's really good with those ice storms and stuff like that. And I think it's Jason Burke up in the north. There's several. There's ones that you follow. There's one, Snowbird Bob is the funniest look. Jimmy's like, who? I said, Snowbird Bob. He's like Arkansas, Missouri. He's really good with that Mid-South ice storm, stuff. The more that you can prepare and understand that it's coming, so maybe you need to pre-position some of your storm trailers. We've put damage assessors out in front of the events, to try to get them, because they are first boots on the ground. If you're really running, as a utility, if you're running a storm the way that it should be run, your assessors are hitting the ground just as soon as it's safe to do so. And you'll have a clear picture of the breadth and the scope of damage. I can't tell you how many times I've heard where they didn't have assessors out there and they thought they had the storm wrapped up and found a whole pocket of damage that they didn't even know was going on. So you got to have eyes and boots on the ground to be able to do that. So you get those damage assessors out front, then your veg in your line. Right. And, too many times they just want to throw the resources at it. Right. Let's just get them in. But you really need to understand it does you no good to have 100 trimmers there when you needed 600. Exactly. They're not going to put a dent in it. So understand the damage, and then get those resources in there. But, logistics is always a challenge. Where do you put them? I did a presentation in the fall and in the spring with a statewide co-op group. And both presentations, I focused on that planning and being prepared and prepare for the unpreparable, right? You say, oh, yeah, well, we do a lot of storms every year. We know how to prepare for storms. Look at Helene Milton. Look what that did to the Carolinas. You can't prepare for that. You can't. You can have plans in place. You got to plan for the unthinkable. Right? Unfortunately, I was with them in the spring and did that presentation, plan for the unthinkable. And then look what happened. It was horrible for them. Just absolutely horrible. We were able to get up there and help some of them. We were spread very thin, but you gotta have your base camp locations laid out ahead of time. You gotta have contracts in place for your base camp partners, because one could be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that guy that you always go to that supplies the county fair is probably not going to be able to help you in a Cat 5.
Yeah,
okay?
That's exactly right.
Or an ice storm that devastated the entire state. So have partners. Have multiple partners. Have those locations laid out. Have your contracts in place with terms and conditions in place with your veg, with your damage assessment, with your wire down guard company, with your line. Have all of that in place. And get to know those people. So this is what I tell people all the time. It's great that we've got a contract, we've got an MSA, you know our rates, we know your terms. But how do you operate? Do you like 2-man units? Do you want a 4-man crew with a foreman? Do you want 2 buckets and a digger?
Do you
want
work day shift, night shift?
Do you want pole trailers? Do you do day and night? Please don't bring me in there, and I've never worked on your property before, and you expect me to operate the same as the contractor who's there every day of the week, because it's not going to happen. You are setting both of us up for failure. Let's work together. Let's partner. Let me understand your needs. Let me understand this is a sensitive area for you, right? Let me understand that you've got voting booths set up next week for a county voting thing, and you need this back on. The more you can communicate and relay to us so that we can understand how you operate, the better we're going to do when we come in.
Yeah,
because we're going to understand what it is that you need. So that communication, that true partnering is going to make the difference between a 7-day storm and a 13-day storm.
Yeah, and just the massiveness of all of it. I don't think people realize everything that goes on behind the scenes to activate that many people. You're not talking about moving 100 people. You're talking about moving tens of thousands of people by the time you do the assessment teams, the tree trimmers, the linemen, all of the camps where they stay, bringing in people for food, lodging, laundry. Like there is a never-ending list of resources that have to activate when this stuff happens, and you have people get so mad that they've been 2 days without their light switch working. It's just beyond me that they think all of that should just happen at the snap of a finger. It just doesn't work that way. And I don't know if it ever will, right?
Yeah, I've always had a rule with our folks that we do not engage the public, right? If they're upset and they come screaming and hollering, drive off, move away, whatever. Yeah. We were traveling. It was myself and 2 ladies. They were drivers for us, traveling from Florida to the Carolinas. I can't remember which storm, Florence maybe? I can't remember. And we had our storm T-shirts on. And this big, huge, burly guy in a gas station, I mean, dude's like 6'6", probably 350, looks over and he's like, my little old lady, driver, storm response team, you're not doing a really good job. And he lit into her. And I was like, oh, insert self. And I jump in between him, and I'm like, dude, I don't know who you think you are, blah, 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 blah. You're not going to talk to her that way. Like, she's a little old lady. Yeah. Shame on you.
A little respect.
Yeah. You know, so I broke my own rule. I engaged the public, but I was not going to let this man berate her. Yeah. We had already been working on storm because it was one of those that hit Florida first, then went to the Carolinas. We'd already been working probably 2 weeks out there doing everything we can do to help. Yeah. And you're mad because you're still without power. And I can appreciate that. I've been sleeping in my vehicle trying to help get your power back on in the ways that I can help. Yep. You know, so they truly don't understand what it is to bring in 10,000 resources into an area. And I always tell my folks too, please be sensitive to the people where we're going, right? They've been impacted. Some have lost their home. Some they're without power. The Waffle House is a great example. Those people are there working regardless of what happened.
That's it.
Right? You be nice to them and you tip them and you take care of them. You know, it's just be human.
That's it.
Just care about people. It makes a difference.
Yeah. Compassion goes a long way. Yeah. And society as a whole needs to keep that in mind, especially in these situations, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So I got a little bit of a different angle for this next section of questions, right? It's just some quick, rapid-fire, first thing that comes to your mind questions.
All right, that can be scary.
All right, so let's start with going on storm. What's your go-to drink?
Diet Coke.
Diet Coke for the win. Biggest hurricane you've ever worked? Ooh, that's a tough one.
That is a tough one. Ida, probably.
Okay. All right. Ida was a big deal. If you could use one word to describe the utility industry today, what would it be? One word.
Challenging.
Challenging. That's a great one. Most underrated role during a storm response?
Support.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. And then your favorite part about working with linemen?
Camaraderie.
There's nothing like it out there, is there?
Nothing like it.
Yep. Perfect. Well, I appreciate it. I know you're a busy lady. I won't keep you for any longer, but I do thank you for coming on and sharing your opinions. If anybody out there wants to get a hold of you or contact you, what's the best way for them to send you a message? Is there a website or an email that they can find you at?
Yeah, they can go through our website, OneSourceRestorationLLC.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. But my phone number's out there. You know, they can call me personally or reach out to one of our team members.
Perfect. Thank you, Tammy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of Power Grid Talks, from the bucket trucks to the boardrooms. I'm your host, Tom Williamson. I want to thank you for joining me as we talk to the people behind the scenes who keep our grid strong. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give it a share, and leave a review so we can keep bringing more voices from across the utility world to the conversation table. You can also find us at PowerGridTalks.com. Until next time, stay safe and keep the power flowing.